All right. And we are live. This is our second podcast. You've got myself and Steve again tonight. First of all, we want to welcome anybody that tunes into the podcast this evening. As we've talked about in our previous one, we're really just kind of going through some of the evidence we've caught as the Scientific Paranormal Investigations of Michigan. We've been doing this for probably about a little over a decade now. But we kind of wanted to get out there and share some of the experiences that we've had, some of the fun places we investigated. And so tonight, Steve is going to take us on an ethereal exploration of, I came up with that off the top of my head. That was painful.
It sounded good.
Thank you. Bruce Mansion here in Michigan. So with that, I'm really going to let Steve run the show tonight. I'm here more as his color commentator, his John Madden, or my John Madden to his Pat Summer, also to speak, for those old school football fans out there. So I'm going to hand it over to Steve, and I'm going to let him give you some background on Bruce Mansion and share some of the exciting stuff we caught while we were there investigating. So have at it, Steve.
See, I prefer your Ken Daniels to my Mickey Redmond, for the hockey reference.
Hockey. I was trying to think of other ones. I was thinking like, Greg Kelser to George Blaha, but Pistons aren't doing that good right now. I didn't want to go that route.
Yeah, you're a football guy. I'll let it slide.
Thank you.
All right. So we're talking about Bruce Mansion. Bruce Mansion is one of the places we investigated in, I believe it was 2021 in January, after meeting the owner's wife at a speaking engagement we had at Addison Library up in Leonard. She came to one of the presentations, and, we kind of met them through there. Let me bring up one of the slideshows. Let's reset the slideshow back to 1 and get this to the stage. Okay, so this is Bruce Mansion. This picture, obviously, it's a nighttime picture. Shannon on our team took this picture the night of our investigation. It was a fantastic picture, so obviously I saved it, made sure we put it on the, on the page and everything. So my eyes are going to go up and down as I'm reading the words, the notes I took up top, so don't mind me. So Bruce Mansion, it is in Brown City, Michigan, in the middle part, northern middle part of the thumb of Michigan. If anybody's, I just noticed we just went live 6 seconds ago. So we're going to start over. Yeah, so we must have started it ahead of time.
It says we've been live for 2 minutes and 47 seconds. If you're looking at the YouTube feed, it's going to be slightly delayed.
Okay. So anyway, what we're talking about, we'll keep it going. This is new to us, so we'll make sure we do it better next time. So Bruce Mansion in Brown City, Michigan. Those who are familiar with the area, it's in the northern middle part of the thumb. Anybody that lives in Michigan knows you can do this, and Bruce Mansion's right about here. That's our map of Michigan. So it's on the M53 highway, about an hour and a half north of Detroit. As you're heading north on M53 highway, it's also called Van Dyke Expressway. You get through Imlay City. It's about 25 minutes north of I-69 for anybody that's you're familiar with the area. So it's been on book covers, magazines, newspapers, countless stories on the internet. We'll talk more about that, the whole abandoned aspect that we hear all the time from them. So it's a 3-story Victorian Second Empire architecture, which means basically, the way that it's designed, like with the windows and the towers, it's just the type of architecture it was at that period of time. Built in 1876 by the Scottish immigrant John G. Bruce. Now, some reports say that he was a lumber baron. There are other reports that he was the postmaster in the neighboring town of Burnside. Real info says that him and his brother-in-law, by the name of Webster, is Bruce and Webster General Merchants, which he owned a general store on the kitty corner where this property is located at. I've not been able to find real concrete evidence of him being a lumber baron or a postmaster. Those are reports that are in articles. All three could be true. It's not really, the important information to the story itself. So the mansion itself, it took a year to build, to completion. And the records actually say that it was built for around $5,000 in that time. So 150 years ago, $5,000 got you this incredible piece of property in this mansion. And again, I got another picture which I'll show in its glory when it's all completed. Local carpenter by the name of Herman Buby, B-U-B-Y. Not sure how to pronounce the name, so that's why I spell it out. The picture that I have up right now, this is in the third floor. We called it the cedar room, because it has, the cedar shiplap or shakes or the paneling all around the room. The room is incredible. That would have made a great, like, a card playing room or a bourbon drinking, cigar smoking room. This is the cistern that's in the basement. Now, the basement itself had this cistern. This is where they collected their water. Again, 150 years ago, saving water was a big thing. They stored it in their basements. All right. So also too, as I'm going through the pictures, you're going to see, certain parts of the architecture of the building. So this is the basement. This is the coal room. Yes, they stored coal. That's how they heated the building. They stored coal in the basement, burned coal. It had bay dormer windows, the very elaborate molding, brackets, all original. The handle, the doorknobs, everything. Mahogany staircase. Going to the second floor, there's a lot of wood trim moldings. All the flooring, everything in the building is still original. So there's a cornerstone for the building showing that it was made in 1876. And this is actually a picture from the outside. I drove through the area in March. We took a little trip and came through. And we stopped off at the gas station that is, like, basically right next door to the building. You can see that the building, it needs some work. Current owners have been working at, attempting to do restoring it. But it has been difficult. Restoring a building of that size takes a lot of money, takes a lot of time, and it's just the two of them. I'll talk a little bit more about that, as we're going.
I want to jump in here.
Yeah.
Jump in here real quick. I want to point out that this looks extremely comfortable compared to when we investigated. We were in there. We were trying to get in, and we were working around various schedules. And two of our team members, Brian and Shannon, had a grandchild on the way. So we were going to try to get in there and investigate sooner, so that we didn't interfere with when their grandchild was born. So we went in, I think it was in January or February. I can't remember exactly which date, but January. It was maybe January. It was maybe 13, 14 degrees in the house at the time. There's no running water. So, plumbing and stuff you didn't have to worry about, but it was frigid at the time. So to see it like this looks actually nice compared, temperature wise compared to when we were there.
I driven by it in the summertime. It looked even better. Yeah, but cool. No, it was really cold in there. And there was one working bathroom, which had a space heater. So we would all take turns having to go to the bathroom. We'd be in there for 5 or 10 minutes at a time, just warming up before heading out to another part of the house.
Long bathroom breaks.
Yes. Yeah. Long bathroom breaks. But as you can see, I mean, the mansion needs a lot of work. So they've tried, they've done tours. They've partnered up with other, investigative teams like, Detroit Paranormal Expeditions and other, and they've gone through and they have actually had paid guided tours and guided investigations trying to raise funds, but it's a large task. I mean, it's a big building. It needs a lot of work. So, they're working through some stuff right now, trying to determine what they want to do with, with the place now. So, speculation, talking to a lot of people. I mean, you can see like the little smart car up front. We think that they're doing that to try to deter people from wanting to go and, like, kind of like not be able to have like a good clean picture of the place. It's got the hearse out there. They've had the Halloween decorations. They try to get some sort of interest, in people, if they wanted to come by and take pictures and give donations, or when they were doing the tours, trying to get, the interest up. So we're hoping that gets changed. But I mean, as you can see up on the side here, there's like a little fence here. That's the gas station, which is like right next door. And one of the problems that they have is people show up at the gas station, they look at the building next door, and they think, wow, this is all, just this big abandoned building, and people have tried to break in. They've tried to steal things. They've set up security cameras, and they have speakers, and they, yell at people, and they call the cops all the time. And it's like, it's unfortunate that people can't respect a private property, but, again, that's just how people are sometimes. So moving through the slideshow, this, one of the original organs that have been in the place. This is the stairway that it may mention. This is a mahogany stairway. It's like, really, it's a gorgeous stairway. Even the woodworking. So this picture right here, this is in the tower up on the third floor. So I'll go back to the very first picture. So very top, you see the red light up in the top of the building. That's where that red light is. That's the tower. And I'll touch on that a little bit more in some of the history as we're going through. So let me pop back to where we were. Okay, so there's the tower. There's an example of the molding and the stairwell and the floor, and all of it's original. 150 years, it has stood the test of time. It was, craftsmanship was phenomenal. It has lasted this long. All right, so back to a little bit more of the history. So in 1881, in the Thumb, if anybody's familiar with Michigan history, there was what was called the Great Thumb Fire. In the area of the Thumb, there was actually, like I said, there were lumber barons, there was lumbering. They did not have very good practices, so there was a lot of ecological damage, a lot of, just junk and hazardous waste and stuff like that. Well, in 1881, they had a severe drought. And because of the drought and because of the heat, there was also, they classified them as hurricane class winds, a lot of windstorms and everything. So forest fires were happening a lot. So over, when this fire started, it started, I think, in Lapeer County. It started moving north. There's like 4 counties that were affected by this. Fire ran so quickly through the area, it caused 1 million acres of land to basically be decimated in a single day. It killed 282 people, just buildings, barns, homes. I mean, it destroyed towns. I mean, it just ripped through the Thumb. It caused about $2.5 million worth of damage at the time because, for inflation, that's about $75 million today. So it was a lot of damage. Because of that, of course, I'm reading my notes here. So the mansion was actually spared. The fires stopped just before they got to that area. So the mansion, the couple buildings around there, the general store was all spared. I mean, unfortunately, the general store did catch fire a few years later, but it wasn't caused by that, and it was rebuilt a couple times. Excuse me. Because of the fires that happened, and a lot of people don't know this, there was an effort that was put into place. I don't know if anybody knows the name of Clara Barton. Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross in 1881. Their first official disaster relief was response from the Great Thumb Fire. So a little bit of history there for the American Red Cross.
I did not know that. Yes. The name was familiar, but I did not know that was their first response. That's pretty cool.
Yes. Also, because of that time frame, because of like the lumber barons, because of all the stuff, they wanted to make sure that they, the huge losses. They wanted to make sure they kind of started to prevent that. They started taking a little bit more care and consideration to what was actually going on with what they're doing. They developed the Northern Forest and Protection Association to manage the forest fires in Michigan. That was actually superseded by the U.S. Forest Service. So the U.S. Forest Service took a lot of what was happening with the Northern Forest and Protection Association and incorporated that into a nationwide forest fire response, and the things that were going on. So some good came out of it. It helped, obviously across the country. So, I mean, this was a huge disaster and they learned from it. So yeah, again, some good came out of some tragedy. So moving on. So back to the mansion. At some point after the fire, the mansion was sold to a woman by the name of Cynthia Smith. She later died of fever in 1921 in the house. Her son sold the house, and it changed hands quite a few times over a short period of time. Excuse me. It was eventually purchased by a gentleman by the name of John Walker. So in 1925, he was having financial problems. His wife left him. He was very distraught. This is the gentleman that's associated with the rumor of the pedestrian that was killed, that was ran over by him in his automobile. The rumor goes he ran him over. He was distraught. He took the body and buried it someplace on the property. Then he hung himself in the tower, which is where that red light was, on the property. But there is no evidence. There's no reports. There's nothing in there which talks about that happened. Even on the death certificate of John Walker, the cause of death was left blank. Now, is it possible that they could have left that blank out of respect for him because they didn't want people to think they committed? Sure, it's possible, but there's no evidence.
Yeah, it's one of
He
those
was
old the folklore thing of it, right? The stories that maybe they get exaggerated, maybe they don't, just to increase the excitement around a building like that. Sometimes, not knowing for sure that that actually happened. It's just kind of interesting how that tends to happen a lot of times with some of these buildings.
right. Yeah, and again, like I said, there's no evidence of it. They've never been able to find, even the current owners, when we talk to them, everything that they've scoured through all the records of the house and stuff like that, they've never found anything that confirms that that's what happened. So again, it's taken as rumor. Um, so again, but around that time too, so like there was a big thing where, like, when people died, they had funerals in their homes. I mean, they didn't have funeral homes. They didn't go to funeral homes. It's like it was a family event. Bodies were laid out, in their parlor areas. There was an event. People came and viewed. Well, a lot of people actually started using Bruce Mansion as a funeral because it was like the biggest, grandest home in the area. So it was almost like a status symbol to have your funerals there. Also, too, like, a lot of the deaths from the fires that I mentioned in 1881, some of part in part was used at Bruce Mansion for, like, we've been told that it was for, they used it for storage. They used it for, funerals for people who had died there. So a lot of tragedy and a lot of death going through that house. And again, at the time, people lived in the houses. They got sick. They died in their houses. It's just the way, there was no medical advancement at the time. And in hospitals, if you got sick, a lot of times you didn't survive. You died in your house. Um, so moving along. So as it moves along, years over years, turns over hands, eventually came to the ownership of Dick and Peggy Tripp. They had the home for a few decades, and they actually did a pretty good job of trying to keep up with the house. I saw pictures. I think it was 2013. A team was out there, and the house actually looked in really good shape. But again, the family at the time, they were doing their best to keep up with it. It sounded like they could afford it a little bit better. And it's, over the years, it's had a little bit harder time, but they've been trying to, recover from it. So again, we were out there in January of 2021. Very cold time. We got very cold in that place.
I still haven't felt my toes since then, to be honest. It's been insane.
Yeah. So when we got there, we met the owners. Oh, actually, we met, the husband. And out of respect for them, I know their names are public. People have already, people know who they are, but out of respect for them, we're not going to say current owners' names, or anything in the situation. So we refer to them as the owner, the husband and wife. We met him. He talked about a lot of what was going on. He talked about, he'd see, like, objects move or get flung off. He had a mask that was hanging on the stairwell that would get flung off. They talked about people, I guess, one of the claims was somebody got pushed down the stairs. They've seen, apparitions of cats, running around upstairs, people, getting touched, the normal run of all the paranormal activity of general items that you hear. So we were there, we investigated. It was, myself, you, Dennis, Shannon, Brian, your mom. I think
Sandy.
Yeah, Sandy. I think that's all we had there at the time.
Yep.
So we went through the house, and you know, it's an amazing house. I mean, just the history alone.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's big. You walk in some of these houses, I've said this before, houses have a personality. You walk into a house that was built, 4 days ago versus a house that was built, a century ago. They still have personalities even 4 days ago, but the history when you walk into a place like this sometimes can be almost overwhelming. So it was fascinating to be in a place like this. That was pretty cool.
Oh yeah. So let me see. I want to see if I have that picture. Oh, there it is. All right, let me get this up on my other screen here, and I'll share it out. So it's just not let me share it out. I have to apologize. This is a new application we're using. Try this one more time. If it can't work, I'll.
Yeah, which picture was it you were going to share out?
Oh, here we go. So this is the picture right here. So this is Bruce Mansion after it was built. You can see how amazing it was. This is all the staff, the family that lived there. You can see in the background there was a barn, carriage house, all that for, at the time, $5,000, which in this day and age is probably it's hundreds of thousands of dollars in comparison to like, to build something like that. And in its heyday, as they say. So I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, and you can tell too. I mean, there were multiple rooms in there, so obviously they had staff, they had all types of people there. All right, so let's get into what we found there, and we investigated all the areas of the house: basement, first floor, the parlor, um, second floor where the bedrooms were, and there's actually one area in the back where they were converting it into an apartment. The plans were for them to live in the apartment while they had investigations going on, so they could stay on site. Um, Top floor where they had again that cedar room, and there was other areas up there which were unfinished, and then all the way up to the tower. Um, Going through. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about some of um, a couple of the EVPs that we caught. So in the parlor, which we picked up, probably a couple pieces of the best evidence that we've had. We're having an EVP session. Sandy, Dennis, and myself were in there talking. I think you, Shannon, and Brian, you guys were upstairs going through some of the other rooms. So I'm going to play the clip, and the area that I'm talking about is amplified. So when it comes in, you'll hear the volume kind of pick up a little bit, so you can hear it a little bit better. It's a little bit hard when you're doing a share like this over the internet. So let me bring this up here.
Yeah, you can hear that. There's something there.
Right. So I'll play it again. I mean, obviously, we're going to say what we feel it is. I mean, people listening, through the video, they're going to hear things first, and obviously, at this point, they're going to come to their own conclusion. But we're going to play it back. And I'm going to say what it is that we actually found for it to say.
Mm-hmm.
So what we determined it said is we can't move, which, I mean, it's a cool EVP to pick up, but at the same time, it's kind of a little sad. I mean, because you don't really know the context of what that's being said. It's like, they can't move from the building, they can't move from that location, they can't move from that room. You really can't pick up, exactly what it is just from a few words. So you think, you speculate, but what we try to do is we try to pull this information and all this evidence, and we present it to the clients, and we let them hear it, let them come to their own conclusion, and let them decide what it is that they want to feel about it. And like, we don't influence them, influence.
Influence.
There you go. I'm having a hard time saying that word today. But it's like, again, I mean, that's a pretty powerful EVP to catch. Very clear. It's easier to hear on the computer. I mean, obviously right now we're streaming right now, so it's a little harder to hear. That's why I amplified it. But I've also got the video of that as well, because I picked it up both on the audio and the video. So right at that point, and you can hear like people walking upstairs. You can hear the talking. One of the hardest parts about EVP evidence is knowing where everybody is at the location, knowing what they're doing, and say, okay, well, this is so and so in this room. We know that they're upstairs, and you're trying to cut all that information out and still listen to what's going on.
And it's interesting because, like, when we're investigating, a lot of people don't realize we're in the middle of maybe having a conversation, or just talking, or we're having an EVP session where we're asking questions. And this is kind of how it sounds. Like, you can barely hear it in the video. And even on the voice recorder, you can't really hear it all the time unless you amplify it. But that's typical. A lot of times we'll be investigating and you may not hear, anything until you're listening to your recordings later. So it's weird when you're hearing it after the fact. And you're like, well, why didn't I react to that? And it's, oh, well, because I didn't hear it when I was there. A lot of times if we hear disembodied voices, which is different than a EVP, because a disembodied voice you can hear with your own ear as you're standing there. But an EVP is something where it's only recorded on these media, you don't hear it with your own ear. You don't have a chance to react to investigate further. I think if we heard somebody or something say, I can't move, we'd probably ask more questions about that. But in this situation, we didn't know it was there until after reviewing the evidence.
Right. And this is one of the reasons why we try to schedule follow-up investigations. So when we find this information out, we learn these things, we want to try to go back and maybe ask those questions. So maybe we can get that dialogue going. I think one of the best, disembodied voices that we caught was when we went to Indiana State Sanatorium. The singing on the third floor of the administration building, because multiple people heard that. Thankfully, we caught it on audio, but it's we're up there and we hear it, and Shannon's like, "Did somebody hum?" So we heard it, and we'll talk about that on a future podcast. We'll bring up like EVPs and some of the more interesting EVPs that we've caught. So when you were talking about having the conversations and talking and things coming out, one of the clips that I'll play is where something starts to say something, but then it's cut off by a team member start talking. So I'll play that, and then we'll discuss our thoughts on that. Get that here.
Can you knock on the wall for us, just to let us know you're here?
I'm Sandy, by the way.
I'm Steve. And I'm Dennis.
Sorry, I had to let the "I'm Dennis" part play. But
Dennis always has the best recordings. I don't know what it is about him, but it's just his voice. It's great. So that's fun.
So I'll play it again, and you'll hear Dennis talking, and then you'll hear the sound. It'll become amplified again, and you'll start to hear something, say a phrase or a couple words, and then Sandy will talk, and as she talks over the top of it. And obviously, she didn't know what was going on. It's not going to say, "Gosh, darn, Sandy, why'd you just talk like?" We don't know. That's the thing. We don't hear these things. So let me play that back.
Yeah, I've been guilty of that myself several times. I tend to talk a lot, and a lot of times we're doing EVP sessions. I'll just start talking, and I've had my team members say, "Hey, bring it down a notch." I'm like, "Oh, that's right." So it happens.
Yes. So here's the clip again.
Can you knock on the wall for us, just to let us know you're here?
I'm Sandy, by the way.
I'm Steve. And I'm
Dennis.
Dennis.
I put that as my ringtone. Or sorry, like when Dennis calls me, I have to put that on his ringtone. I'm Dennis. So one of the things we try to do is when we have an EVP session, we're asking questions. The biggest thing is spreading out the questions and the talking. So if you don't give enough time, you might speak over a response. You might, miss something important. So one thing to always remember, and we do this all the time too, where we have to remind ourselves, ask the question, give it time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always a good lesson for anybody, even especially anybody that's new, wanting to get in the paranormal field. Take that into consideration. Another thing to do too is one thing I do is I record all the time. So I don't do just an EVP, like we'll walk in a room, say, "Oh, let's do an EVP session," pull out the recorder and only record during that time. I'm recording the entire time, video and audio, because I've caught some of the best evidence when we're just walking around checking things out. We're not doing anything specific. So you never know when it's going to happen. It never happens on schedule. So
I remember an investigation where we were actually meeting the clients for a pre-investigation interview. Sometimes we go in and talk to the clients just to understand what's going on, understand the house. So we have an idea of how many team members we should bring out and maybe get in and know where we're going to set up equipment right away. And it was a house out in Waterford, and we walked in, and as we're sitting there talking to them, just having a conversation, went back and listened. We caught a couple of EVPs just having the conversation about when we're going to come out. So, even if you feel like you're in a house that may have a haunting of some sort, pull out your voice recorder on your cell phone or any voice recorder you have around sometimes, and just let it record. You don't have to do an EVP session in order to catch something.
And yes, it's a lot of information to go through. You spend hours going through all that, making notes, marking your times on there that you got to go back and re-review and chop the clips out and re-listen to them again. But if you're there trying to find information, trying to find evidence, that's just due diligence. That's just doing what you need to do. You do a little bit here and there, you could be missing so much. So
yeah, I mean, if we do a 6-hour investigation and you have 3 voice recorders, that's 24 hours, 18 hours. My math's not strong tonight. But yeah, I mean, that's how much time you're gonna have to put in afterwards if you've used that much equipment. But it's those few seconds or that 30 seconds of an audio clip that make it all worthwhile. No doubt about
absolutely. Yeah. And it is a lot of time. But if you want to go there, you can't just go just for the thrill of going and doing the investigation. If you're going to be a responsible investigator, you have to put in all the work. It's not just showing up. It is doing the research, finding the clients, doing the pre-interviews, going and doing all the evidence review, sharing with the team, collaborating, reveals. I mean, it's a process. It really is. So and it's not for everybody. Some people don't like doing it. Like I said, some people just want to go. They just like the thrill of going to the place, and that's it. So,
yep.
So okay. So that happened in the parlor upstairs. Now we did catch other EVPs. We caught one in the basement that said, "Yeah." We caught what sounded like breathing. I'm not going to go through all of them. I mean, a lot of them are standard EVPs that you catch at a lot of places, and obviously, we're at 28 minutes right now. We don't want to go, a full hour or so because it's a lot of information to go through. So, but I've
got us booked for 6 hours, so we're good.
Oh, okay. Well, good. So it'd be 5.5 hours of black screen.
Sure.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit more too. So just in the parlor there and the few EVPs that we caught isn't the only thing that happened. Talking about the EVPs that you catch that you can't finish hearing. Dennis was up in the master bedroom. One of his EVPs, he was asking about. I think he was asking about the guy that supposedly hung himself. As he's talking, you hear people downstairs talking, but then you hear another voice, but it's garbled. You can't really make out everything is, and sometimes it happens. Sometimes you can't make out what they're saying. So, but still, we moved to the basement, which is one of the things that is most memorable for me, considering it was I would refer to it as a personal experience, even though Dennis and I were both down there. But so we're in the basement. There's the cistern down there. There is a coal room. They've, the other investigators who were working with the house, they had a table set up down there with a Ouija board. And one of the things that they did, they'd go down there and they have Ouija board sessions. We don't do that. I mean, it's bad juju, in my personal opinion. Could it potentially cause problems? Sure. I mean, if it really works, I mean, again, there's always a possibility that it's not. I mean, you take that into consideration, but if you believe that it does, if you're not doing it responsibly, you can cause other things to happen, especially in a place like that. And you get to, cause problems and then you get to leave. Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. Don't want to do that in somebody else's home because it's easy for you to walk up and leave something behind. You don't. Yeah, it's not cool.
Yes. So we're in the basement. Dennis and I are in the basement in the workshop area. This is in the other side. Well, actually, I just realized we got the one video of the orb. So this is the basement area. The door on the right, past the furnace, that's the workshop room. So when we're doing our initial walkthrough and we set up, Mike has a setup of Wi-Fi cameras, and we'd set this one up. So I'll point out, so you can see like little dust particles moving around, and we'll discuss orbs in a minute. But in just a few seconds, one's going to appear that is going to act different. And there it is. You can see it in the top of the screen, how it just kind of sits there and hovers. So now I'm going to play that back. So we're going to see it come from near the center of the screen. That's not it there. So there's like a desk there. You're going to see, there it is. It just came to the center screen. It's going to come to the side, and it's going to kind of hover there. It's going to sit there, and then it's going to hightail it to the left. Now, when I go back, keep an eye on the right side of the screen where that open door is. So it hovers, and you see people come out of the door. As soon as they come out of the door, it's like it takes off the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm not a big believer in orbs. I mean, we've talked about this before, Steve, you and I, and this one was unique in the fact that it was 13 degrees. I come back to that number. It was 13 degrees in that house. It was frigid. And I did the Google search, and if somebody else out there on the internet knows what that could be, please let us know. But I did a Google search trying to find what sort of bugs fly around at 13-degree temperatures in the middle of winter. I have a hard time saying that that's not paranormal just because the fact it came over, it stayed there, it hovered there, and then went back the other direction as somebody was walking out. That's unusual. With orbs, we look for it to have its own light, which, of course, a lot of times if you see these cameras with the IR lights, they have circles of lights around them or multiple IR lights. And as the dust orb will come across the screen, it almost looks like it flickers and flashes as it moves across the screen. This was a solid light. It came all the way across, it sat there, hovered, and then went back the other direction. So it changed direction, had its own, seemed to be emitting its own light of some variety. And it's 13 degrees. I mean, it's frigid. I don't know what bug flies around at 13 degrees in Michigan.
And even with it that close to the camera, you would have seen wings flapping. A bug is, you can actually see the movement of the bug. It's not just something that's just a blurry object that's just hanging there. And we've seen those on multiple, investigations. When we did the group investigation in Ortonville, in the cafeteria room, the one clip I caught of something that was just hovering in the air and took off all by itself. Couldn't explain that, and it wasn't a bug that we could tell. The quartermaster house for the Orchard Lake Military Academy in the garage, the object moving that you caught there. 99, probably I'd say 99.9% of everything you see is explainable, in our opinion. We're not telling you not to believe it. People are gonna, orbs are a really touchy subject. It's dust or it's bug, it's attic insulation. There's so many things it is. No matter how clean you get your house, there is always going to be dust flying around. That's just a fact. But stuff like that, we really can't find an explanation for. So, okay. So now moving to the workshop. So Dennis and I were down there. We're doing an EVP session. I got my camera rolling. We're down there talking. I'll play the video clip. And you'll hear people upstairs talking, and then Dennis will ask a question, and then you'll see why this clip really did something to me.
Can you move something around down here? Obviously, these aren't your tools, but...
You heard that, right?
Yeah, it sounded like that was upstairs.
It sounded like it was down here. So now... Did you do that? See, they asked if we dropped something.
They asked if we dropped something?
Because I think that's me asking that question.
Not us in the basement, but it sounded like it was down near us.
It sure did. So that wasn't them?
So, and that's the thing. You guys heard it upstairs.
Yeah, we were upstairs, and I was like, what the heck was that? So we thought you guys had dropped something, and your guys' thoughts initially, as Dennis thought, was it was something from upstairs, but we were up there. Nothing happened up there. It echoed.
Oh no, it was not upstairs, because I'll show you the some information, how we did discover what it was. And I'll show you the process, how we followed through that, but it basically was right by my head because I felt something when it happened. And just
it's ironic. You remember the last podcast we did? We were talking about the growl on the second floor. When I said, what was that? You said it sounded like it came right from behind you. This is karma, like 13 years late, but I'll take it. That's cool. Better late than never.
Right. So I'll play this clip again, and then we'll go into some audio and some other information about it.
Can you move something around down here? Obviously, these aren't your tools, but...
You heard that, right?
Yeah, it sounded like that was upstairs.
And of course, you heard that, right? Like Dennis wasn't going to hear it.
I would have laughed if he'd been like, I'm Dennis. That'd been great. Just like, I don't know what idea what you're talking about.
So, and stuff like that. I mean, when we were on investigations, we try to maintain some composure. There's YouTube channels and there's other things out there where something like that happened. It would be a yelling and screaming and running kind of thing. We don't do that. At least we try not to. I mean, we've never been to a situation where we've thought we had to.
I will say we've dropped a few choice words. I know we're going to show a video somewhere in the future. We'll have to do some bleeping of that one. Dennis's famous line,
Yes.
But yeah, we react just like anybody would react, but we don't panic. We don't run, and we do try to walk back to where the noise is from because we're trying to figure out what that was.
Okay, so what I'll do now is I'm going to go back. I'm going to bring up. I've got EVP of it, and Dennis was also recording, so we caught it on video camera. We caught it on 2 different audio cameras. Now the noise isn't going to change that much, but you're going to hear it's slightly different depending on. Yeah, so this is from Dennis's recorder.
Can you move something around down here? Obviously, these aren't your tools, but. You were there. Yeah.
So the comparison of the sound based on where he was standing, I mean, you could tell it didn't sound nearly as loud where he was at, which was, halfway across the room on the other side of the table, that the workbench that was in there, as opposed to right next to my head,
Which could explain why he maybe thought at first it came from upstairs.
Exactly. So what we did too, so after we talked about that and we talked to you guys upstairs and we were trying to do, so you guys, we wanted to do a comparison. So we went into the opposite room in the basement, and we dropped things in there, and you guys were dropping things upstairs, trying to do some sort of a comparison, because I mean, we knew it was down there, but you guys, we wanted to make sure what it is. So we did a comparison, and this is the video, or sorry, the audio. That was upstairs.
That's the difference right there. That in sound, between upstairs and here, that was definitely down here.
No, that one sounded like right freaking behind me.
Yeah.
So that was you guys dropping something upstairs, and it's a completely different sound. I mean, you can hear that it is actually the sounds coming through the floor.
Can you play that one more time? There was some dog barking in the background. Just want to see if we can.
That was upstairs.
That's the difference right there. That in sound, between upstairs and here, that was definitely down here.
No, that one sounded like right freaking behind me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you hear the difference. And that's one thing that we try to do too. We try to recreate, we try to find out, what it could have been. We want to try to cover all the angles. So before I go into a couple other things, so when Dennis and I were down in the basement, there was another EVP that he caught. So you hear this one.
A lot of high readings just all over the place. Yeah. Yeah.
So you hear those noises as we're talking. We didn't hear that. So that was his voice recorder that was going. And when he went back and reviewed the evidence, he heard those, but we did not hear that happening at all.
So that was left in the room recording while you guys were in a different part, and it caught that of something moving. It almost sounded metal of some sort.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I'll play one more time.
A lot of high readings just all over the place. Yeah. Yeah.
So again, that's why it's good to always have your recorder running and listen, very carefully when you're reviewing back, because if he hadn't had his recorder running, we wouldn't have caught that. And we can't explain what it was because we weren't in the room, but it picked up all that noise.
Right.
So let me I'm going to go through one of the pictures. So what we're going to do is, this is our discovery that we did in trying to determine what it was. So this is a picture here. This is a shot from my video of the ceiling area near where I was standing. I mean, you can see there's a hole there. There's plaster missing. This is the only area of the basement where there was any type of damage to the plaster. Okay. And I got the time up there. The time is not correct as a new camera, so I didn't set the time properly. It's one thing you learn when you get new gears, how to work it properly. So the next slide. So this is a image taken from the video shortly before that noise happens. The reason I got it circled right there is because I'm trying to highlight an area of the floor. So you can see the time up top, it's at 11 minutes. As I'm going through the video, this is the time, this is when that noise happens, a couple minutes later. Okay. Now, when I go back and review more video as we're scanning around, you see something's changed on the floor a couple minutes later. There's a white object on the floor. That's plaster from the ceiling. And that is right where I was standing. And I know that because right above the circle, there's like a little object. You'll see a better picture of it pretty soon. But I was standing next to that. So that's one of the things. I mean, when it happens, when you're recording all the time, you learn how to go through and use that footage or use those recordings to try to, research or prove what you found or try to like reveal what's going on.
Yeah, so it's almost like those games where you have to try to find what changed, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What's different between the two pictures.
Mm-hmm. So here is comparison videos here. So this is the video before. So the circle portion is where the plaster came from. The circle portion on the bottom on the left, you can see there's nothing there, right? On the right side, this is from Shannon. She was doing a Facebook Live. So you can see in that area, there's nothing on the floor. Now, this is the image that I was talking about before. There's like a little hanging dummy that was upside down. They put stuff like that around the house for effect. Well, that's what I was standing next to where it happened. That's how I was able to tell from the one video. So when I go back, we can see clearly now there is something on the floor. So that's how we were able to prove. And when we went back downstairs and checked, yes, that was a piece of plaster that was on the floor that was not there before. So that's how we proved what that noise was. So one thing I want to talk about too is this video where that happening is changed the way that I approach how I use my video camera. Because most people walk around with it in their hand or doing like more of a point of view type of footage where you're carrying a camera on and whatever you're seeing, they're kind of looking around. I've since learned, I've set myself up a rig so it's easy to carry it and set it down, is occasionally I will set it down recording us. If I had done that in this one, set it down on the table over to where I was standing, I would have caught that plaster falling from the ceiling. But that's a live and learn kind of thing. So you learn different ways to adjust your investigations to try to get better evidence and try to document things better. So you always learn.
Yep.
You hope you always learn. So
yeah, I think we're always adjusting some of our strategies of how we do investigations. We've been doing it for 13, 14, 15. I don't know, Steve. My math's not good. I figured that out earlier in the video, but
about 14 years.
We always try to learn from that. 14 years. That sounds about right. So yeah, so we're always changing how we're investigating based on what we learned from the investigation before.
Exactly. And this was a learning experience for me. So last bit of stuff we have. So right before all this happened. So going back to that Wise camera where we caught that anomaly. So it's a little piece of video. So this is going to happen right in the middle. So it's going to be a quick little blast right in the second. You're going to see something show up and disappear within like a frame. It might be kind of hard to see on this video. Right there. We go back.
Yeah, right around that pole in the center, just to the right of that.
Yep, there's a chair in the background. Focus on that chair right in the center of the screen. Boom, right there. You see there's a couple little flashes. Mm-hmm. Now, it's a Wise cam. It doesn't pixelate like that. It doesn't have things that just show up, for no reason. Here's a screenshot of that frame. See, there's almost looks like a couple scratches, like you get like an old negative or an old picture and you have a couple scratches on it. That's what it looks like. That happened. We went back and checked all the times again, all the timestamps. You figure out what was going on. I knew what time it was based on the wrong time I had set on the video camera compared to what was actually the time was. That happened just moments before the plaster fell in the other room, which was directly on the other side of that wall. So is it coincidence? Sure. It could have, the plaster could have just came at that time, but, talking to the owners, they've never had that happen before. He's never had to clean plaster off a floor. He's never had it fall near anybody. He's never had it fall randomly. That was the first time he knew of anything like that happened.
And we were just asking for it to do something. Like you and Dennis were saying, hey, move something. I mean, yeah, sure. Could be coincidence, but the timing of it makes it interesting.
you have to take into consideration that it could be total coincidence. Could it just been just the time it was going to happen? We were there asking the question. Sure. You'd like to think that, it was a response. So, but, those are just all the things that, again, anybody that's new to investigating, always check, always make sure you're recording, always go back and double check, make sure where everybody's at, review your recordings and stuff like that, because you never know what you're going to pick up and you might miss things by just, not trying to think of it with, but just not doing all the extra stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we walkie-talkies seem old and archaic. However, it's really helpful, as you've seen in this video, when something does happen, you can quickly say, hey, where are you at? You're on the first floor, you're on the second floor, a house like this, are you on the third or fourth floor? So it really helps to be able to say, hey, where are you at when you hear something? Because you just never know. And it's we've debunked things several times because they're up on the second floor right above us. That's the footsteps we heard. And then a lot of times it's like, okay, well, they're not on that floor. We heard footsteps on that floor. Let's get up there, see if we can figure out what's going on. So knowing where your team members are and all that stuff helps a lot.
Exactly.
Cool. Yeah. Steve, was that all you had for us tonight?
Oh God, I hope so.
I'm disappointed in you, man. No, that was fantastic, man. The history piece behind it. There's a lot of things in there that I wasn't even aware of. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. Again, we do ask that anybody that may have seen this, please don't go trying to find this house. Don't go trying to break into this house and check things out. That's not why we're doing this. We're sharing our experiences with you, but don't go into homes that you think are abandoned. Some of them aren't. Don't go into places that are abandoned and closed down. You're putting your own life at risk. Sometimes it's not worth it. So just remember, if you're going to go look at a place and want to start investigating, you could always reach out to people that are familiar with current investigations and reach out to homeowners and try to find out who actually owns the place, talk to neighbors, stuff like that. Just don't go wandering in. This is a beautiful house. It was a great experience. We just ask that you don't go up there trying to get into it, please, for everyone's sake. Just admire it from a distance. And hopefully someday they'll start some investigations up again and, people can get in there and start taking a look at it from the inside. That would be awesome.
Yeah, and part of the thing too is like one thing I was mentioned earlier is like if on Facebook, there's all these groups of like these abandoned homes groups or these abandoned mansions where people, I see this, I see Bruce Mansion posted all over the place, and people are like, oh, that's great, let's go check it out, and it's like, no, it's a private residence. Don't go trespass. It's not abandoned. It's privately owned. But again, they post a picture of it all over the place. It's like I said, it's been in magazines and newspapers and books. It's all over the place. It's a very famous, landmark. And people are driving up M50, like I said, going up to the tip of the thumb, up to, Bad Axe and Port Austin and all that stuff. You pass it, and people always stop. Oh, that's cool. Or they want to go up and take pictures. A lot of people just take pictures from the road, we're just respectful, and that's what you want to do. You don't ever want to, like I said, make yourself a nuisance, because they've had so many problems. They've had, like I said, people break in, they've stolen items from the yard and stuff like that. They've had their lawn equipment, they had a weed whacker stolen where somebody pulled up and just threw it in their van and pulled out and drove off. Fortunately, they caught him because they had it on video. But again, always be respectful. Always ask permission. And if people say no, then it's no.
Yep.
Just do it the right way.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a phenomenal podcast, Steve. Thanks for all the information. Thanks for all the evidence that you're able to share with us. Thanks for the historical facts. That was fascinating. I hope our viewers enjoyed that as much as I did. We're hoping to try to keep this semi-regular. I know our first podcast was a little over a month ago. We want to try to stay on top of that. So hopefully we can do that. But keep an eye out. I'm not going to do the like and subscribe thing. Man, I hate when people do that.
No, I mean, you do
want to say it, feel free.
Yeah. Like and subscribe. Obviously that helps us. We're trying to, obviously get more exposure. We're trying to get information out there. We're trying to show people good ways to do investigations. We're not, again, we're not going to talk about controversies that's going on in the paranormal field. We're not going to talk about, other teams and their evidence. We're not going to be reviewing that stuff or debunking other people's stuff. We're talking about our stuff. And that's what we're trying to get out there. So it's like, let everybody else do their thing. We'll do our thing. We know that people are going to comment on our stuff at some point, our tens of viewers right now. Hopefully we get that up to the dozens of viewers and maybe the 15s of viewers, as things go on. So it's a gradual thing. And if not, even if we, reach one person and they say, well, this is really cool, we like the way they do that, they're very interested in it and they want to be respectful and go out, and really help people and have a good time. And if it's just one person, we're happy with that.
And if you have questions, you can post in the comments, at any point in time. I know on YouTube, you can continue to post comments even after the video's out there. So feel free, if you have questions, let us know. We'll try to respond to them as best as we can. My wife's downstairs making dinner, so you hear a lot of clanging and banging behind me. So I apologize for that, but I'm going to go eat here shortly.
And the dogs you heard, that was Mabel and Elwood. Another dog walked out, and they were, of course, guarding their front window diligently. So
that's awesome. Yeah. All right, Steve. Well, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. Let's look forward to hopefully a couple weeks from now, we'll come back with another episode.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone. Have a great evening.